Mom's dumplings. Dumpling is a traditional dish and loved by lots of people. And so Feng, he loves eating dumplings. When he was a little boy, his mother usually made him dumplings. To him, his mother's dumpling was the best dish in the world. After graduating from college, Feng didn't get back to his hometown and decided to stick in the city for a living. He tended to work hard and wished for a better life. Being in the city by himself wasn't easy. Feng had to face lots of troubles. He had to deal with his work and maintain his friendship as well as colleagueship. He had to pay the bills monthly, and so, he gradually didn't even take good care of himself. He was very easygoing with food. His day-to-day food was instant noodles or fast food. Eventually, Feng missed his old days so bad that he missed his hometown and missed the dumpling dishes made by his mother. Feng came to the supermarket to buy some freeze dumplings and just steamed a few minutes to eat. But how it could be like his mother's homemade dumpling? He was too bored and got homesick. And so, Feng decided to deny all of the traveling invitations from his friend and drive home in May's holiday. He wanted to come to see his parents after days, and he wanted to eat his mother's homemade dumpling dish. That time, Feng didn't tell his parents he would come home. He wanted to bring his old parents a surprise. Everything was fine until Feng drove by the highway. There was an incident. It might be because of the heavy rain the day earlier. The asphalted road had been dried up but not the dirt road. The road had been flooded the day earlier and left muddy pools. Feng left the highway and turned to a small dirt road. He realized he was entering a muddy road. Feng was a careful driver, but the road was too small for him, so he was unable to get away from a muddy pool, and his car was unable to move any further. At that moment, there was nothing dangerous to him. Luckily, his car was not broken or scratched. That was the way to get to his town. People didn't usually take that road. The road was too quiet, and it was already dark, with no one around him. Moreover, by looking at his car in the muddy pool, he had to ask for 3 to 5 more people to push the car out of that. Feng picked up his phone and called the call center, but he had heard an unexpected reply from them. That was in the national holiday, and that was way in the middle of nowhere. They had no one to come and help him out. After a while of struggling, Feng started to think of calling his parents. First off, he wanted to make them a surprise. If he called them at that moment, there would be no surprise anymore, but also bothered them. That was not a good solution at all. Finally, Feng ended up with the idea of letting his car be there and walked home by himself. Feng thought if he walked as fast as possible, he would reach home in 2 or 3 more hours, and he could ask for help from his neighbors the next morning. Not long later, after just a few walk steps, Feng had regretted that the road was way difficult to drive, but it was more difficult to walk. His leather shoes had been dirty and full of mud shortly. Feng got exhausted because of hungry. After a few minutes, he sat down at a boulder. He sat on the boulder and shorted off his breaths. Then, he sensed something moving behind him. Feng turned around and saw a man out of nowhere appeared at the end of the road. The man was likely to see Feng there. He walked slowly towards him. Once the man came closer to Feng, he could see the man clearly. That was an old man, with his gray hair and a fresh face. Once Feng faced the man, his eyes sparkled with hopes. He felt that must be his life savior. Feng was pretty sure that man came from his town, but he could not remember his name. He spoke up to say hi. The man was likely to see Feng familiar to him. He politely replied to him and asked him if he was from Lok village because Feng was familiar to him, but he could not recall. Feng tended to tell the old man his name but thought he had left the town when he was 16. He had left the town in years for college. He only backed home once in a blue moon, so might be the old people in the town would not recall much who he was. Feng spoke up to the old man that he would tell him his parents' names rather than him. And he told the old man his father is Lu and his mother was Ju. Once he heard of that, his eyes looked brighter. He asked him if his house was at the east of the village. There was a giant poplar in front of his house. Feng happily told the old man that was his parents' house, and he tended to pay a visit to his parents at that time. The old man continued the topic. He spoke up avidly to Feng that his mother's homemade dumpling was the best. But then, the old man was likely to realize something. He turned to Feng and asked him why he was there at that late. Feng gave a sigh. He told the old man his situation. He had driven home. But unfortunately, the road was too muddy for his car to drive in. The wheels had stuck in the muddy pool. There was no one in the road, so he wanted to walk home and asked for help. Hearing Feng's difficulties, the old man smiled at him and told him that it was just a piece of cake. He screamed out towards the end of the road to someone. The car of Lu's son had stuck in the mud and asked people came to help him out. Feng curiously glared at the old man. Deep down, he wondered who was the old man talking to in the middle of nowhere. But he saw 3 more people came from afar after the old man finished his words. Once the 3 of them came closer to Feng, he could see that they were all old gray-haired men, probably around the old man's ages. The old man patted Feng's shoulder and told him to lead the way for them to his car so that he could get out of that situation sooner and got back to his warm family. Feng quickly took the 4 old men to his car's place. He got worried about how the 4 old men could push his car out of the mud, so he stopped and led them to come behind the car and push it as strongly as possible. The 5 of them tried their best to push the car out of the muddy pool, and then they could make it out of the mud. Feng was very appreciated their help. His problem had finally been solved. He said thank to all of them. He told them that he would have no ideas if they didn't give him a hand. Feng took out some money and gave them. He thought that was the right thing to do at that moment. He hoped they could take it. The old man gave him a slight smile and told him that was nothing. They didn't want his money. He continued that if he was indeed thankful, he could say to his mother to make them some dumpling if she had a moment. And then they left Feng there. He wondered how weird those old men were. Once he could pull himself together, the 4 old men had left without a trace from his eyes. It was really dark at that moment. Feng thought he should leave the place and drive home. Once he reached home, it was past 8 p.m. His mother was indeed surprised when seeing her little son. Feng put his package down and told his parents about the weird event that he had experienced on the way home. After hearing Feng's story, his parents could not guess who that kind old man was. They blamed him for how careless he was and why he didn't ask the old man's name. Feng scratched his head and replied that they were leaving him so fast. He had given them money, but they didn't receive it. Then, Feng recalled the old man's word before leaving him. The old man wanted to eat his mother's dumpling and found that it was very weird. After hearing that, his old parent exchanged their looks and kept their silence for a while. That night, Feng's parents had stayed up all night to prepare the dumpling filler, and they made a big dumpling dish. The next morning, they took Feng to the town cemetery, which was the place for dead people. The young people in the town had moved to the city gradually. Some would visit home 1 or 2 times a year. Some had migrated to the city and just paid a visit once in a few years. So there were some old lonely people left in the town. Their graves didn't have anyone to take care of, so it looked like being a ruin. Talking about Feng's parents, they were such very kind people. Once they had spare time, they came there to take care and cut off the grass around. On Tomb Weeping Day, Feng's mother usually came to the cemetery, on behalf of the passed away people's family, put down there her homemade dumplings for them as well. And that is why those old people even didn't eat any of her dumplings once they were alive, but they had been still impressed with his mother's dumpling afterward.